Question number 1, Mr. Robert Hicks.
This morning I presided at a meeting of the Cabinet and had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall be having further meetings later today.
Mr. Hicks.
Speaker, I'm sure the whole House would wish to pay tribute to those who have been involved with the successful liberation of Kuwait. And in particular, our own armed forces, whose courage and indeed professionalism and inspiration has been an example to us all. And to the families of those who have lost their loved ones, we offer our deepest sympathy and indeed our gratitude. Mr. Speaker, would my right honourable friend not agree that very real problems still exist in that part of the world, and it's incumbent upon all nations, through the United Nations, to ensure that a Middle East peace conference is established at which all the issues, including Israel, the Palestinians and the rest, can be discussed, and to give every encouragement to the Arab nations to formulate their own security arrangements for the future.
I am grateful to my honourable friend. I shall, of course, be making a full statement on these matters very shortly. But the fact is that Kuwait has been liberated, and one of the most remarkable military campaigns of recent years has been concluded. I would like to pay the warmest possible tribute to the commanding officers out there of all nations, but particularly General de la Villiers, who has commanded our own troops with such skill. I entirely agree with my honourable friend. We must now look to the future and secure peace, particularly by the means mentioned by my honourable friend.
Bill Kinnock.
Mr. Speaker, may I say to the Prime Minister that today in this Parliament and throughout the whole country, we share the feelings of satisfaction at the defeat of aggression and the feelings of sorrow at the deaths and misery caused directly as a result of that aggression. Will the Prime Minister agree with me that the only fitting memorial to those who have made the ultimate sacrifice is to build through the United Nations lasting peace and lasting justice?
I share the emotions expressed by the right honourable gentleman and the conclusion he reached.
Mr. Temple Morris.
Right honourable friend agree that in sustaining the peace, if politicians do half as good a job as the armed services have done in winning the war, we won't be doing at all badly. In sustaining that peace, would my right honourable friend differentiate between the Iraqi people on the one hand and Saddam Hussein and his Ba'athist clique on the other? Would he further agree that the longer that Saddam Hussein and that clique remain in power, the more difficult it will be for all nations in the world to have any sort of charitable attitude towards Iraq?
I agree with my honourable friend. We have never opposed the Iraqi people. It is their leadership and Saddam Hussein that has been the enemy on this occasion.
Mr. John Hume Robertson.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Hume Robertson.
Will the Prime Minister pay tribute to the 300 servicemen and their 5 minesweepers from the Rosyth Naval Base for their skillful achievement of the long and hazardous task of clearing mines for the Allied fleet? Is he aware that the Minister of State for the Armed Forces said just on Tuesday that Rosyth Naval Base was the easiest and most suitable target for closure, in spite of the assurance given by the Prime Minister to this House on the 5th of February? Is that the kind of welcome home that our returning heroes can expect from ministers in this government?
I willingly join the honourable gentleman in paying tribute to the men from Rosyth and the Royal Navy who've done such a magnificent job in sweeping the northern Gulf of mines. I do that with the greatest warmth and willingness. As the honourable gentleman knows, for I have told the House before, a whole range of possible options concerning the armed forces generally are being considered to reduce the costs of defence support. In the case of the Royal Navy, that is bound to mean closure of some naval establishments. At this stage, the Ministry of Defence are looking at various possibilities and studies are being carried out. They are essential that those studies are carried out before any decisions of any sort can be made. I repeat my assurance to the honourable gentleman, no decisions whatsoever have been made about the future of Rosyth.
Tim Devlin.
I refer my honourable friend to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Our friend will be aware of the profound joy and relief of families of servicemen in the north of England at the news of the ceasefire today, and in particular at the extremely low level of casualties. And will he confirm that the troops will now be brought back from the Middle East as soon as possible and replaced in their positions by a UN peacekeeping force?
We will certainly be bringing our own troops home shortly. Precisely what will happen thereafter is a matter yet to be determined, and no doubt I will have more to say about that shortly.
To Penny Ashdown.
May I associate myself with the words of others in the House on the role of our armed forces? The use of their professionalism and skill has been put to the service not just of the freedom of Kuwait, but also to the rule of international law and the authority of the United Nations. And may I pay a tribute to the Prime Minister as well for the calmness and authority with which he has led the nation at this difficult time. May I ask him if his view is the same as mine is, that if the coalition will now invest this extraordinary victory in the United Nations, then we will have created not just a powerful instrument for peace in the Middle East now, but for peace in the world in the future as well.
I do agree with the right honourable gentleman, and I'm grateful to him for his kind words. If I may say so, I think the attitude taken by the right honourable gentleman, the Leader of the Opposition, and the right honourable gentleman himself have led to a unity in this House that can only have been of comfort to all our troops.
To Tony Speller. Number 4, sir.
I refer my honourable friend to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Speller.
Mr. Speaker, sir, will my right honourable friend accept the congratulations through me of the people of North Devon for his leadership over the past few months, and now as he turns his view towards more domestic problems, seek if he cannot right some of those inequalities which have bothered people in relation in particular to the community charge, and in particular to look at that case where a husband and wife are both charged a community charge, even though only one is actually in work.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. As he knows, we are examining the question of the community charge, and we will make announcements upon that when our examination is concluded.
James Lamond.
Is there any chance of the governments at the United Nations applying the same energy and enthusiasm into trying to stop the sale of arms to dictators like Saddam Hussein and others throughout the world, in which case it might not be necessary to sacrifice the young men that we have had to sacrifice in the recent war?
As the honourable gentleman knows, there has been an embargo from this country on sales of arms to Iraq for a considerable number of years. My right honourable friend, the member for Finchley, imposed a strict embargo on sales to Iraq many years ago.
Mr. David Shaw.
I am making plans for a series of visits to all parts of the country and very much hope to include Kent among them.
Confirm the commitment of his government to completing the dual carriageway A20 into Dover and also
Order. Perfectly legitimate question.
my right honourable friend confirm that his government is committed to completing the A20 dual carriageway into Dover, that his government is committed to completing the A2 dualling between Lyddon and Dover, and furthermore, will he send his best wishes to Bob Bale, Trevor Povey, and all my constituents who've been fighting for Britain in the Gulf.
On the last point of my honourable friend's question, I'm certainly happy to send the best wishes he suggests to me. On the earlier part, my honourable friend has raised this matter with me before, both privately and publicly, and I'm happy to confirm that part of the A20 between Folkestone and Dover is currently under construction. as my honourable friend is aware, a scheme for the improvement of the A22 entered the road programme last year.
In Easton, number 6.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Easton.
In welcoming the end of the Gulf War, could I now put it to the Prime Minister that in view of all the urgency that had to be taken in opening water and providing beds for possible casualties from the Gulf conflict, will he now use the same endeavours in trying to reduce the hospital bed waiting list, now standing at 980,000, and if he bothers to visit the Ribble Valley by-election, will he also try to explain to them why their waiting list for beds is 4,380, which has doubled during the past 4 years?
As the honourable gentleman should know if he doesn't, the health service is now treating more people more efficiently than ever before. Not least due to the reforms introduced by this government and the funding provided by this government.
Mr. Hugh Dykes.
I refer my honourable friend to the answer I gave some moments ago.
And I thank my right honourable friend for his incisive and decisive war cabinet leadership, which has led to success in the Gulf, and also add my words of admiration for the performance, the unsurpassed and brilliant performance of our armed forces. As I have RAF Bentley Priory in my constituency, will he understand that I particularly think of the Royal Air Force performance, because the Battle of Britain, after all, was directed from there 50 years ago, and will he confirm that the particularly brave performance of the Tornado pilots in low flying on the Iraqi airfields did in fact, contrary to rumours, neutralise substantially many of the Iraqi airfields and prevent the Iraqi Air Force from fighting on their side?
I can most certainly confirm that. The bravery of the Tornadoes and their pilots in the early part of this campaign played a very material part in ensuring that casualties in the land war were so few. I'm very happy indeed to pay tribute to all those pilots.
William Ross.
It's now over. Will the Prime Minister give an assurance to this House that considerable expense will now be put to trying to find a better means of identifying friendly ground troops?
This is a matter that we will certainly give attention to. The whole House will understand the tragic occurrence that leads the honourable gentleman to raise that question. It is certainly the matter that will have the most careful examination.
James Arbuthnot.
Number 8, sir.
I refer my honourable friend to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Arbuthnot.
In view of the recent murder of an innocent civilian by the IRA and the attempted murder of the War Cabinet, does my right honourable friend agree that now is not the time to water down the Prevention of Terrorism Act?
Very much agree with my honourable friend. The Prevention of Terrorism Act has served us well in recent years, and for the moment we still require it.
Seamus Mallon.
Day when people throughout the world can again savour peace, may I, as an Irishman, express the anger and revulsion felt by the vast majority of Irish people at the murderous attempts on commuters in Victoria and other stations. Could I ask the Prime Minister if he would agree that the contrived security alerts which we saw again yesterday are causing enormous suffering and disruption to thousands of people going and coming from work? And would he share my view that to kill and to heap suffering on people in furtherance of political ends is a sad and cynical perversion of the very concept of patriotism?
I do agree with the honourable gentleman. It is wickedness beyond belief, and it deserves the contempt of everyone.
Mr. Ian Twin.
I refer my honourable friend to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Twin.
Join in the warm congratulations of the House to my right honourable friend for his conduct of the war. But now, in looking to the future, will my right honourable friend bear in mind the problems of the division in Cyprus and the fact that United Nations Security Council resolutions have still not been implemented there, leaving the island divided?
I will certainly bear my mind to that problem. I share my honourable friend's hopes that the Cyprus question will be resolved. I think everyone in this House would wish to see that, but I don't believe it can be directly related to the Gulf conflict.
Mrs. Alice Marr.
I refer the Honourable Lady to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Alice Mann.
Has the Prime Minister had time to read the recent Amnesty International report on the people of East Timor? And will he at this moment make a commitment towards a more peaceful and just world by banning the sale of weapons to Indonesia, given that that country has illegally occupied East Timor for 15 years, committed the most atrocious acts of violence against that population, and isn't this a good time now to do something about the evil of the arms trade?
I have not read the amnesty report that the Honourable Lady refers to, but I will certainly seek to do so and reflect upon what she says.
Statement, the Prime Minister.